Hey, good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to Friday the 13th, actually. Welcome to the Weekend Toast. My name's Isaiah. This is Josh, Devin, and Ben. How you guys
What
doing
up?
today? Meh.
Just
The air.
I
I think
texted.
the air is trying to kill me.
Oh, gosh. Whoops. I just texted. The air starting to kill you?
The air, like I don't know if it's allergies or if I caught a bug. Tested negative for COVID yesterday, so it's all good there. But
Yeah.
You do know
Let's get that out there before people start saying
the incubation period is up to 2 weeks.
Okay, every time I hear that term incubation period, I always think alien. Like it sounds
Yeah.
something like much more sinister to me.
Yeah, no. I mean, sorry. I said that jokingly, Devin. If those are your symptoms and you tested negative, you are sick with a negative test. I'm sure that means you're fine. The reason
I think today, like I felt great yesterday, like no symptoms of anything, and then today I'm just like sneezing like crazy and my eyes are watering. So I'm assuming it's allergies. Maybe it's the dust from all the leaves dropping or something.
Yeah, I know Rebecca and I are finishing up our quarantine tomorrow because we were exposed 2 weeks
That's
ago.
right. Yeah.
And so we were told that based on the health organization, all that stuff, the incubation period is still 2 to 14 days. So even if you you hear all the places that are doing like 5 days and then go get a negative test, or 48 hours with no symptoms, it's like it really doesn't matter because you could have gotten a negative test at day 5 and then not gotten sick until day 10, 12, 13, whatever it is. And so that's why there was no way around it. It had to be 2 weeks for us and or in order to go back and not potentially screw everything up.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It's a mess.
I have a question on the testing stuff because, like, you know how, like, if somebody on a football team tests positive, they'll give them like 5 more tests.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but then like they're like, oh, he got a negative one now he's okay. And it's like, well, wait, no, doesn't that mean we're just less sure?
Yeah, it's let's just say this. I think schools, businesses, and understandably so, have found the easiest they have found people in authority that'll tell them the fastest way to get their people back, or keep their people from having to be gone. And I get it. It has stunk being, not because of being home, but because of what it means like work wise. It's been really hard. Hi, Rebecca. Rebecca says hi in the chat.
Hi, Rebecca.
But yeah, it's been a pain. So I think the doctor we consult with literally said, he goes, look, I know other places are doing certain things. They've been told by whether it was the state or whether it was this place or that place, but it doesn't change the fact that you could still get it up to 14 days, even if you were exposed. And so it is what it is. But hey, that's not what we got to talk about today. I mean, I'm sure we will in some form or fashion, but today we've got some cool stuff on the docket. We are going to talk about the latest in the elections. We're going to talk about Parler, and then maybe a little bit about, or I know we'll talk later about it, but we'll talk about the Mandalorian. What's so funny?
What?
What's so funny?
I just thought of a joke.
I thought it was funny that Devin and my wife just our wives, excuse me, just brought us things, but they're diametrically opposite. Mine's ice cream and his, I'm guessing, is like herbal tea.
Mine's tea, yeah.
That's funny. If it would have been ice cream, I would have been like, maybe that's not the best choice. So first up, guys, we got the election is still going. It is not over.
Is it though?
Is it really?
Well, technically, the media doesn't get to call it, Ben. The media doesn't get to call it unless you call it for the right side. Then it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. So here, just to kind of toss this out there. So the latest, and you guys can add or anything to it. The biggest thing is that, and it says it here in the title, like Trump is pretty much, him and his lawyers are all leaning in on multiple states and areas about there being voter fraud. Essentially, he's winning little things in certain areas and not in other areas. All the while, President-elect, I'll put it in quotes because technically the election's not over, is pretty much already starting to roll out his plans, work on who's going to be in his cabinet, all that kind of stuff. He's already started talking about things he'll do on day one, a bunch of executive orders that he would go ahead and sign, really. And he pretty much said, in a reaction to a lot of the stuff Trump did. What have been the things that have stuck out to you guys? The voter fraud has probably caught my attention more than what Biden's doing, but I'm curious to know what you guys have thought about the past week.
Yeah, I think a couple things. First of all, the call to investigate voter fraud,
It's totally
I think Yeah, like that's sure, do that. I think the
Yeah.
assumption on Trump's part that of course there is, and therefore, and it's enough to decide the election. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a healthy way of thinking through things. But like, if you'll see everybody saying, oh, you know, the Republican Party's so complicit in this. And it's like, if you look at what they're saying, a lot of people are just saying we should look at every case of voter fraud and we should look at all, you know, legal votes and stuff. I don't think there's a whole lot of sycophancy going on, and definitely not, the investigation process won't be marred by this. That's not how the Justice Department works. So it's not great that the certain ways Trump's, you know, saying these things, but what's going on itself, none of that's going to be bad. If you think that the election isn't over, that's true. I don't think that's delusional at all to think, hey, you know, we got to wait till this thing is over. I think that's unfair to say, oh, of course you should say that Biden's president-elect, but you should expect him to be. I mean, it's pretty.
So
if you don't think he's the favorite at this point, that's a little delusional.
So
but,
Ben, a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing from you know, people on the left, whether it be Colbert or anything like that, whether it's personalities or just people I talk to, they're, and Josh kind of touched on it, their biggest concern is that this undermines democracy moving forward. And it's not the fact that they're calling for stuff to be recounted, it's the way he's going about it. Like, do you agree with that? What do you think?
In regards to Trump himself, I think some of that might be fair to say, that it definitely does show a mistrust in the democratic process, and it's trying to sow a seed of doubt where there shouldn't be. Like, that's not where the scrutiny should be. But like Josh kind of said, like, to investigate is fine. Like, even George W. Bush, he said a couple days ago that he has called Biden and Harris, congratulating them, and that he said that, you know, Trump is within his rights to ask for a recount or investigation. He's within his rights to do that, but that the result still seems apparent, and that and so if Trump wanted to, you know, do what Al Gore did, and Al Gore in 2000, like, he called Bush and congratulated him, and then whenever he saw that the margin was smaller in Florida, he recanted his congratulation. And
It's like 600 votes, right? Is what he ended up winning by?
Like
He was like,
543. Like
I think it was like within 300. Yeah.
Yeah, and,
very small.
well, yeah, and so it was a very small.
Which is where a
margin,
recount
and then you
actually
had the
can,
whole-
you know, change things when it's by thousands of votes.
Yeah, by thousands of votes, but usually it only changes a number by hundreds, if that.
Exactly.
And so the margins that Biden are winning by are in the thousands and tens of thousands. So it's not likely to swing it towards Trump, even if you define that. But the thing is that even in the process of that, of the recount, Al Gore wasn't necessarily calling everything fraudulent, and he wasn't saying that things were part of a conspiracy and that Biden was in on it. He wasn't accusing George Bush of any of that. He just said, hey, I want to recount because I think that this might go a different way. And so I think,
and there's the problem with the ballots in Florida, the butterfly ballots, if you guys heard of Hanging Chad. So it was not a conspiratorial thing, but there was an accidental issue with how some of the ballots were cast.
And that's why 2000 is different than 2020. Like,
right.
But
Very, very different.
But I'm saying in regards to the temperament of the person who is on the losing side, that's different. And so it's different to say, hey, I want clarity and I want truth, rather than saying I am assuming and accusing my opponent of stealing this election because I lost. And I think one thing that Trump said is, like, whenever he was asked, will you accept the results of the election? And he said, only if I win. And so, you know, that's kind of funny.
That's my mindset, right?
but and that's a lot of people's mindset. So do I think Trump is kind of human in that? Yeah, that you don't want to admit, you know, a loss, and you don't want to admit defeat. But I think I kind of go with what Mitt Romney. Hold up, let me make sure it was Mitt Romney. I think it was Mitt Romney who was just talking about, there comes a point whenever you have to let the institution of the presidency and the good of the American people take precedent over the fact that you're not wanting to
Right.
lose. But I just think it's different to say that I want, to make sure that everything's clear and good, and to accuse other people of something that you don't have direct evidence for, so I think that's slander. I think that that's really inappropriate and immature to do that. But that's not me trying to say that I think Trump is trying to undermine the democracy entirely. I think that he's within his rights to ask for a recount, and he's within his rights to do that. But I want. But then if I go back to 2016, I think that you can see some of this coming from the left as well, though, not wanting to say it was legitimate, blame it on Russia. There's not a whole lot of Russia blame or questions of whether or not Russia interfered now, even though they could have done just as much this year as they did 4 years ago. And so I think that there's generally a temperament of this, I don't know if you want to call it ego or whatever, that seems to be growing up, that I hope to see squashed and to come down just in the whole political arena.
So that was, you mentioned what I was going to ask Devin next, was that, like, so this is essentially, I feel like you can step back from a bipartisan position and see that the accusations are very similar, just in the sense that as soon as the loss is there, the apparent loss, if you will, there's just, it's conspiracy. This is why they cheated and stuff like that. Devin, do you see any difference from the way the left accused Trump and his administration of winning, and it being, Russia getting involved, to the way that Trump is handling it? I mean, because even like in Pennsylvania, you had Al Schmidt, who was out there pretty much saying he's like one of the city commissioners in Philadelphia, or he's the city commissioner in Philadelphia, pretty much saying like, I don't see anything. Like he's like, we're following all of these things, we're running it all the way through, and then like pretty much said like, I have seen no widespread, if any, form of voter fraud, and immediately Trump like throws him under the bus too, calls him a rhino and stuff. Like, do you see any difference from the way Hillary and everybody on the left were attacking Trump after 2016 to the way that Trump and really him and whoever else, his followers, are attacking the left in the way that they're cheating?
I feel like you kind of said it yourself. Like in 2016, it felt like at least there were some leads to follow, and like, see, okay, hey, they may have something here, so let's investigate it. And a lot of it came up fruitless, and it took years and years and years to figure it out. What was that? Just last year when the impeachment hearing was happening? That was this year, wasn't it? Earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, this is a personal opinion. Like, I thought it was just ridiculous, the amount of effort that they put into that stuff. And so, like, I'm curious. Do you see? Yeah, sorry, I cut you off there.
Well, I mean, it seemed like, at least originating like all the way back in 2016, there were at least some leads to follow. Like, there were legitimate questions that were raised, and then they investigated them and didn't really find any evidence whatsoever. Now it doesn't seem like there's a lot of actual leads to follow. It just seems like the Trump administration is just kind of pulling them out of air, and everybody else on like all the different networks are all kind of saying, well, they are administering different levels of grace in how they choose to say it. But like the one who's supposed to be the most right wing, Fox News, is even like refusing to air people who are making these claims, where you feel like they're just pulling them out of thin air. And they're basically saying, hey, we have not seen any evidence whatsoever of any type of voter fraud that would be so widespread that it would have any type of, change on the election.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. We talked about it in our group chat. So you were talking about, I forget the host, the news anchor's name, but I forget it too, because here's what I would say is Fox is also, like, within the organization, a number of people have talked about their dissatisfaction. I think even Tucker Carlson that same night was like, come on, what are we doing, guys? Because
he got attacked too.
Well, he was coming after their own stuff for that morning. So here's what happened. What's her name? McEnany, right? Is her last name? Kaylee.
McElhaney?
Kaylee is her first name. I forget. It's McEnany or something like that.
It was like McKinney or...
Yeah. I feel anyway, great news show, guys.
Y'all know.
That girl. So she was making a press conference and giving her statement, and was making some pretty strong remarks in regards to, illegal votes, and we only want the legal ones and stuff like that. And the news anchor pulls back, says, "I can't do this. I can't, in good countenance, continue to show this." And a bunch of people on the right, whether it was Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, any of those guys, have pretty much just said, like, wow, even Fox now. Trump bashed him on Twitter for censoring speech. And that seems to be the big thing this week that I see on the conservative side, is like this fight for speech. You guys see this as, like, what did you guys think of that instance? I know we talked about it in the chat, and it was like, oh, cool. Not cool as in like, yay, but it was like, well, that was interesting. What did you guys think about that, him pulling back from that? Did he handle it well? Do you think any of the drama around it is warranted?
I think that it's a very bad decision for platform. Now, again, I think that, Fox can air whatever they want. Facebook can remove or put up publications, whatever they want, when we talk about these censoring situations. But I think it's a bad idea because, first of all, everybody knows the claims, right? Everybody knows Trump is saying that there's fraud. So if you're a TV station who's legitimately disturbed by that, if you cut somebody off from saying what somebody already knows, first of all, you're not doing what you want to do. And so this whole, like, I'm doing this in good conscience. I'm like, oh, well, thank you.
Good countenance.
Countenance, whatever. But yeah, he's like, I morally can't do this. It's just like, look, like if TV was decided by what we can morally allow people to see, I mean, my goodness. But I think it also instills, they are all against him, man. Like, if you're a follower of Trump who's like more prone to these ideas, I don't think anybody would be convinced by hearing the press secretary saying what she was saying, because the ideas are so prevalent. But when you remove it, and I think this is the problem with social media platforms too, when they censor things, it gives the sense, it does seem like you're trying to do this. So I just want to be clear. I think everything she was saying was complete BS, but I think it's just a bad move in the network's own interest to censor something like that.
I agree with Josh. I think that, like, they could have just as well completely showed the full interview and then commented on it.
Right, that's what I said.
Yeah, because now, unless Fox News has somehow set the precedent that what they are going to back up and say that whatever comes from the White House is true. Like, that's not a fair thing for a news outlet to do either. So if that's the precedent that they're saying that they have been advocating, that they've been saying that whatever comes from here is true, and we're just going to hold to it as true, then that's their first problem. But they shouldn't be putting themselves in the position to where they feel like they have to cut something coming from the White House because they feel like it's not true. They should be able to, in good conscience, let them say what's not true, and then for them as the news organization to clarify. Now, these things have not been verified. Those claims have not been verified. We just want to make sure that we clarify to you that we as a news organization have not seen any proof of what they're saying. And I think that would have been good and fine to do. Mm-hmm. I think that they were afraid that their viewership and that their audience was going to watch that and then not listen to what they had to comment on later, or that they were going to watch that and assume that everything was true because that's the tone that they've already set.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here. I mostly agree with what you guys are saying, but I also kind of just viewing it from a different perspective of just being a human, who this guy, he just like,
what are we?
Being human and just
my perspective was as a lizard person. Okay. So go on, Devin. I see what you're doing.
No, but just like, I feel like the anchor was just like, here we go again. We've been dealing with this all week. We have these people on. They provide no evidence whatsoever. All they do is make these outrageous claims, and they just sit there and talk about there's fraud, there's mass corruption, they're stealing the election, blah, blah, blah. And then they provide pretty much no evidence to support it. And I feel like they just got tired of it. It was like hanging up on somebody on the phone call, like on a phone call where you're just like, oh my gosh, okay, here we go again. Like, so if they had done this like the night of the election, it would have been a huge problem. But after these people have been coming on these networks for a week and saying the exact same stuff, and just just using different little anecdotal stories that end up getting disproved later on. And I just kind of feel like the guy got tired of it. He was like, no, we're not going to show this anymore. You've seen enough. Like, we're tired of having to come on afterwards and say, hey, well, there's been absolutely no evidence to back this up so far. So I don't know. I mostly agree with what you guys are saying. We shouldn't censor people, but I kind of just got the feel that they were just tired of it.
No, I get that, but I think, Ben, you bring up a really good point that now Fox is setting the precedent that whatever we show you is something that we feel morally good about, that this is true. Like,
Yeah.
every press secretary, even with stuff that's less extreme than voter fraud, every press secretary for every president spouts complete BS from time to time. And so what, are we not going to show that anymore? And if they do show that, are we to think, oh, well, this is obviously a lie, or this is obviously hiding something, but you decided to show it? Do you think that this is true? It's a stupid thing that we will later call the network's integrity into question. Again, I don't think
Later?
it's some moral. No. Well, no, I'm
talking
saying
about
later.
I'm talking about. Sorry, that was a joke at just networks in general.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. For those of us who haven't gotten there yet, by the way, stick to print journalism. Everybody, read multiple perspectives.
Your local news.
Yeah. No. All your local news wants to do is like, hey, this panda was born, and also these 3 people were murdered, but
Hey,
then another cheetah was born.
I'm just saying.
so
I'm saying support
it's
for the
all
local
okay.
news because they are going
I have
down.
zero support for local news. It's because
Anyway.
it's a bad product that they don't care.
I mean, I feel like
Whatever.
Ben kind of touched on this, but I feel like their concern was that this is going to be misleading for a lot of people out there, that there's a lot of people that are such avid Trump supporters that they believe everything that comes out of his mouth, and they're just waiting on him to say something so that they can believe it. And even if Fox
And they had to go to Fox for that?
no, even if Fox News tried to come on afterwards and say, hey, there's been no evidence to support those claims, it doesn't matter to them. But at the same time, the people who are like that, I mean, you're not convincing them otherwise. Like I think Trump was absolutely right in 2016 when he said I could walk out into the middle of Times Square and shoot somebody and my voters would still vote for me. I think he's not wrong about that.
Madison Avenue, all right? Not
Madison
Times
Avenue.
Square.
But
Come on. Times Square, that's too much. That'd have been too much for people.
Context.
Like, it'd make a difference. He could walk out and shoot somebody in public. There would be people that would still vote for him and be like, well, that guy deserved it. I mean, I don't even want to get into the police shootings, but that's been
be like, have you seen his criminal record?
Have you seen his criminal record? Yeah, he probably deserved it. Like, hey, if Trump shot him, he probably had a good reason for doing it.
Oh gosh, Devin, in good countenance, I cannot continue to let you go on with this hypothetical generalization of humanity, Devin. Okay. Josh said something.
What else do we have?
Well, right. Josh said something at the beginning that I think is important, and we can shift this because we're towing this idea of censorship and stuff like that, which goes right into what we're going to talk about with Parler. But Josh, you said at the beginning, like, we should expect, and I think any objective person looking at this, like, because looking at the stuff, did you guys see what happened with like Project Veritas and what's his name, Richard Hopkins, the whole postal service thing in Erie, Pennsylvania? So like, Lindsey Graham had cited this guy as saying that there was a bunch of like one of the postal services there that they were allowing votes to be counted that were postmarked after the 3rd, because in Pennsylvania there they had allowed anything that was postmarked by the 3rd to be counted through that Friday, right? And so this is where like Trump is saying that like 10,000 votes are missing and stuff like that. Fast forward, this guy, the left is saying he recanted that and it was a misquote and all that kind of stuff. But even if his claims were true, that the Postal Service was doing that, they ran all of these scenarios. They went back and ran all of these things. And it came down to where there was actually, out of like the 10,000 that were supposedly there was 129 that even went through, or like the potentials that could have been counted. And only 2 of those that had actually gone through that Postal Service. And so it's like, even the small margin of fraud, even if a lot of these claims were true, I think objectively you have to look at, I don't think, and this stuff is going to sway the election at this point. And so, my 2 cents, if you will, is just that, I mean, the the side that lost is mad that they lost, and that's understandable. You see it every single time. No one enjoys losing. Like these compilations of presidents conceding and stuff like that. Look at the months before that, what their rhetoric was like. You know what I mean? Now it says a lot about their character to do that, and it looks great in a compilation. But like, no one enjoys losing, and sometimes things are more childish than others, and so yeah, it's silly, and I think they're grasping at straws.
And we should also note, like, again, I don't want to make this but that too, but like just to say this isn't the first time even recently is Hillary Clinton conceded, but to this day refers to Trump as illegitimate, which is like, like, could you at least be consistent?
It was funny to me, because I find myself pretty bipartisan. It's a case by case thing. I've said that multiple times, but like, I just step back and like people watch sometimes, and watching so many. I mean, it was the hashtag not my president, literally day one, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a complete flip of what it was 4 years ago, and I thought that was
I have an
slightly ironic, or slightly humorous in its irony. But that, anyway, that's just my 2 cents there. Josh, what were you saying about a poll?
Yeah, so there's a poll, and this is going around like a lot in the kind of left-leaning publications. I think it's 75% of Republicans that took the survey did not think this election was free and fair, while like 98% of Democrats did. But if you went back to 2016, it was like 90% of Republicans thought it was fair. But then the Democrat thing was 70% didn't only think it wasn't free and fair, but thought that the Russians had hacked the voting machines and changed the tallies, which was never part of any investigation. I mean, that was the real bonkers. So like 70%. But then, like, if you look before like October 1st, do you think the election will be free and fair? Both parties were at 50%. So like, what are you asking me?
It's crazy. The funniest one, when I was looking at Al Schmidt, when he was interviewed, he was talking about like, what's the craziest claim you've heard of voter fraud? Remember, Al Schmidt's a Republican in Philadelphia. He was like, the craziest thing that I've heard is that a ton of dead people voted. And he was just like, it's ridiculous. He's like, even if you play that out all the way through, like if a mistake, or you like, we're searching for dead people's votes. And it's just it's crazy. Going into our next thing though is, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about election stuff moving forward. But one thing that was in the news, a lot of the same stuff with this idea of censoring, is the Parler app. Parler has been around for a couple of years, but just in the past like few months, since pretty much like the summer when the election started heating up, has gone from like 4 million users to like 9 million users. Parler here, you know what? Actually, I think I've got it up here. So Parler is a social media platform very similar to Twitter. That their big thing is that this is the platform where free speech can flourish. And so,
is Alex Jones on there?
What's that? So here's what I wanted to do is,
if so, count me in.
Second. Okay. So Parler, what do you guys think of Parler? I know we talked about it because we've seen a number of people go there, and there was a lot of debate about what it's going to be. While you guys do that, I wanted to actually sign up for one.
Really?
Well, because I did this earlier because I'm hearing how suggestive it is. So the big thing is that a ton of conservatives are heading to Parler. This isn't why Parler was created, to be a conservative platform, but that's quickly what it's becoming. What do you guys think about it? Pros, cons, don't care?
I can't tell you how much I love it. And here's why. It's really gonna clear up my news feed. like there's a lot of people who I think are gonna gravitate towards Parler that I just haven't had the heart to unfriend. And so this is really
but why? I mean, you say it jokingly, but what do you mean?
So you talk about the incongruencies and the hypocrisy between elections. That I would be completely fine with a person who is just consistently ignorant. I would just love that. And so if a person wanted to say, not my president this year, while still also acknowledging that they thought it was dumb that people said last year. Like, look, I know that this was dumb 4 years ago when people said this, but I totally get it now. And then they say it. I'm like, I kind of appreciate that more than the person who just completely disregards the fact that things flip based every 4 years. And so, but that's one thing. The other is sometimes it becomes more difficult to even so much as like, let alone post something, because it's the same group of people who feel the need to comment, even though I'm like, you know what, we haven't seen each other in over a decade. What the heck? And so, there are, I think, and I said that facetiously, that people going to are going to clear up my news feed. But what I do think is that, to your point, a number of people are going to go that already have the same opinion. And so they're going to have the hypocrisy that they call out universities for demonstrating. Like they talk about snowflake generation and not wanting to be around conflicting ideas. And I know that that's not necessarily the heart by which they say they are going to Parler. I know that they're saying they're going to Parler because they feel like your mainstream social media accounts like Twitter and Facebook are beginning to censor the truth. But it still also feels like by the time you get to Parler and you surround yourself with, I think we called it an echo chamber, that you're going to find yourself actually being the thing you've despised, a safe space where you can just hear opinions that are already yours and continue to validate things, whether or not they're true. You might find yourself being in the presence of people who are all accurate and all truthful and knowledgeable. Not likely, but you don't need to go to Parler to surround yourself with people who think like you already. You can snooze or unfollow people today. And most of the time, and I think Isaiah, you said it, the Facebook and social media algorithms already help make that happen, to where things that we like and things that we already think are going to be the things that we see more often. So I would say, and this is kind of me saying like, do what I say, not what I do. Stay on the social media platforms around people who think differently than you, and force yourself to read and listen to the opinions of people who do not think the way you do. And I think that you're not likely to do that with Parler, at least not for a long time, until the leftist trolls show up. But I think that it seems very much like a retreat, and a retreat into things that you already believe. That's what it feels like to me. That's what I think it's going to end up being like.
Josh.
And here's why everything you said is wrong. And
I perceive this.
Hey, I want you guys to, sorry, real quick, Josh, before you do that, I want you guys to know why I got super quiet. I've been sitting here doing captchas for the past, how long did you talk, Ben?
Too long.
They're trying to keep the Russian bots out.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue, Josh.
Yeah.
What are you up to?
Nobody is going to Parler to not hear diverse opinions. First of all, Ben, go watch The Social Dilemma again. Every social media platform, from Facebook to YouTube, even Google, tailors information to your interests. So if you're only interested in your perspective, you're already in your own echo chamber. Nobody's leaving Facebook because they hear other opinions. The point is the censoring, particularly of conservative opinions. And I think the breaking point is the Hunter Biden news story, but there's been other stuff. So the motivation, whatever you think of it, is not, I don't want to hear other opinions. It's, I want to go somewhere where things won't be censored, stuff like conservative opinions or news reports like we've talked about. So I don't buy at all that it's the diverse opinions thing. And if you're switching for diverse opinions, if somebody told you to do it for that reason, you'd probably be like, why? Everything I see is already tailored to what I want anyway. So yeah, I do not buy your reasoning. Let
me clarify something real quick. I agree with you 100%. I wasn't trying to say that I think that's why they're going. I think that's going to be the result when they get there. And that they say that they're going because
the result now.
Right. And so I think that you say like, I want to go where because I don't want there to be censorship, but but it seems like there's only one particular or a very close knit group that's going over there. And so by the time you get there, it's going to be that breeding ground of similar ideologies. And so no, I don't think
is that way though. So I just don't
right,
see
and
how that's.
I said that too, and that's why I said I would encourage a person to resist that itch, especially for the Parler people, because when you get there, it's going to be harder to realize that you're not exposing yourself to different opinions. Like once you're there, and once you're in that group of like minds, it's going to be harder to notice and to reach out and to get those other opinions, because it's going to be harder to maybe find that diversity there. C.S. Lewis said that a good Christian should read more, and a good atheist must be careful on how much they read. And so, but he was trying to say, in his opinion, that the true high intellect is going to be one that can read a bunch of different opinions without being sucked into all of them. And so, no, I agree with you that I don't think that in their mind, the main reason they're going is because they're trying to escape differing opinions. I think that's going to be the result, and that's just going to get worse for them, that they kind of just get locked in with to being in that echo chamber.
So Josh, you had mentioned that. So here's what I did think was interesting. It's not letting me sign up for an account, but I did download the earlier yesterday, the community guidelines and privacy policy and stuff like that. They claim to not curate your feed. They don't pretend to be qualified to do so. However, when I did sign up the first time, immediately, like you can tell. And here's the thing: they're a business, and the idea, my opinion is that like the idea that that it's free speech, yes, and I think that like they even talk about the First Amendment being like the driving force behind why they even started Parler, so that people can. But they've already had issues this year, like back in June, I think it was. They had to change the rule, like they say, because they do have content monitors now. They claim to be objective, but they do have rules. You can't use it to incite crime, and so they call it here, Parler will not knowingly allow itself to be used as a tool for crime, civil torts, or other unlawful acts. So they will remove your content if it's bad. They were having an issue with like people posting porn, and what it was on. They have the rules somewhere. I was looking for it, where they were having people that were, if they didn't like what you were saying, they were posting actual pictures of their feces, and so. Well, guess what's now a rule on Parler? You can't do that, and so like, and I don't think
Count
that.
me out.
Well, and I don't think that anybody that genuinely is like concerned with the censorship that we see in the country and free speech is like out there trying. They're mad because they couldn't post a naked picture of themselves. 1 second, Ben. I don't think they're mad that that this is a rule, or even would disagree with the idea that like, look, if this is inciting crime and saying I'm going to kill somebody or whatever, that shouldn't be removed. But it is the thing that I keep going back to, and Ben, you hinted at this. I was trying to figure out. I don't know why it won't let me sign up for one. I have my theories, but that like in the end, this is a business. And what you have seen with social media platforms is usually there's this like honeymoon period, and it's usually before they start before they hit a massive boom, and then at some point this thing has to pay for itself if it's going to continue to be remain free. And the way that happens is through partnerships and sponsorships, going public, on the stock market, sponsorships and ads and stuff like that. And that stuff will influence people. That stuff is going to influence like the content that isn't on there. YouTube is the longest running, like as far as like content being pushed example of that I feel like it's the best one that we have continuously in the YouTube community. There's talks about censorship and content that's being pulled down, and it's all based on what the people in the office think is good and bad. And so like I think it's, if your thought is I'm going to Parler so I can actually have free speech, cool. You're probably going to love it for a little bit, but at some point they're going to have to make a decision, and it's going to be one they probably don't want to make, but they're going to have to make a decision that everyone's going to disagree with. This majority that is going, and at that point they're going to run into the same problem as everyone else has.
Wait, did you say mine? You cut out for a second.
I was saying at some point Parler's going to have to make like it's going if you're going over there because you feel like you're being censored on Facebook or because this all started the boom happened when Twitter started flagging Trump's posts as potentially false. All his tweets started getting flagged. And
Well,
so it pushed it, that from then to now is when the boom of 5 million users have moved over to Parler. Ted Cruz started, pushing it, everything like that. But what I'm saying is if you're going over there because of that kind of stuff, like I get it, but it's something's going to happen. Parler's going to have to make a call on something eventually, and that's going to butt up against this idea of free speech.
Well, I won't be signing up just mainly because I don't need another social media account to waste any more of my time than I already do. But I do hope that I don't think this will be it. I think maybe there will be some valuable lessons learned by somebody else out there. But I do hope that I know there are people that are trying to work on a better version of Twitter, basically, or a better version of Facebook. And I think one will eventually come along.
And
where hopefully
Parler's
they
going
solve
after
some of the
Twitter,
issues.
not Facebook. That should be
Yeah.
clear too.
Yeah,
Parler's
yeah.
going after Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
Well,
going off
and-
Twitter. But I don't think this will be the one to do it, but maybe the one after this that's a little bit like it'll draw everybody's attention and not just conservatives, for whatever reason. But I do hope they do make a better version of Twitter and, a better version of Facebook at some point, which I think it'll happen. I mean, who in their right mind thought Blockbuster would ever go out of business? Nobody. And then things change. So the next thing will come along.
Sears, Kodak.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah, Sears. Yeah, no kidding. So hopefully the next things that come along after Twitter and Facebook do solve some of these issues that we've talked about in recent weeks with like the social dilemma stuff and all the polarization of stuff. I don't know. There's got to be a right way to do it. I have no idea how that is, but hopefully maybe people will use Parler and learn some lessons from it, and they can be that they those lessons can be pooled into whatever the next big platform is that gets super popular.
hey,
So
just real quick, Josh, you were about to say something, but just a word of warning for any parents or anybody that's watching this. Like, so Parlors, I mean, anybody can fake their age to get an account, but they need to know stuff like the Parler right now has 200 people that oversee their content moderation. And so be wary as parents, like the kind of content that you anticipate might happen on a platform like this probably will happen and your kids will come across it, not because Parler's not trying to do their job, but because they have a very limited team. They've hit a boom, they're having server issues, and so this is early in their success, like their booming success. So like as a parent, just be wary if you allow your kids to get a Parler account. The content moderators are probably not going to catch like the porn type stuff, the feces type stuff fast enough to where your kids won't come across it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So I wanted.
Go ahead, Josh.
I would just want to interject two things. First of all, Devin, you're absolutely right. The natural course of businesses is for the titans to rise up, to stagnate, and then to be.
And then to freeze.
And then to freeze. Yep.
Am I?
Go, Josh. You're good.
The big business was listening to you.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Be stagnant.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, I got the notification that my new Wi-Fi router came in, so next time we'll be good. But businesses that rise to the top are there for a little bit, but they stagnate, and then newer, innovative things come and supplant them. That's exactly how all these companies got to the top. Think of the biggest companies in the world right now that we think of: Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook. In our own lifetimes, they were nothing. They were very, very much the smaller ends of the market, or not existing at all. So they came and supplanted. They will be supplanted. But one thing that we haven't talked about: do you guys know what Section 230 is?
It's the place next to Area 51.
No, Section 230 is an internet law from
That's
the
the
90s.
The Decency Act, right?
Yes.
I'll be right back, guys. My dog apparently threw up, and my wife is, pregnant. And
COVID.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Dogs can get COVID.
So this is really important because Joe Biden has expressed interest in, and this is very popular on the left and increasingly on the right, to strike down 230. What Section 230 does is there's a big debate in the 90s when the internet was getting big. If a platform, an internet platform, decides to moderate content, does that mean they are liable for all of it? There were people who wanted to say that if you moderate it all, then you were liable for anything on there that you don't moderate. So Section 230 comes out and allows platform to moderate with discrimination. So Facebook is not liable for what's posted on Facebook, even if they moderate something. So even if they pull posts down, that does not mean that they are liable for a post that got up that they didn't take down or don't want to take down. If Section 230 is removed, then platforms will be, if they decide to moderate things, they will be liable for everything, which people are, it's a very popular idea to get rid of it right now by the new president, as well as other people in Congress. But it would be the end of not only like social media, but like anything with a comment space on online. If you wanted to moderate it, you would be liable.
So can I?
So that's important to keep in mind.
So here's the thing, Josh. Like even as you were saying that, like I forgot about that, and because we've talked about that, right? Or some past episodes where we talked about social media. What, even if just morally, responsibility do these platforms and big businesses have to moderate? Is the word. I mean, we've said it in other ways, but moderate the content that exists on their platform. Like, man, if I had to make that call to, we've also sat here and talked about all of the negative effects of social media, despite all the positives and all that stuff. Like, would it be the worst thing? I know it comes with a lot of consequences and a lot of good is no longer existing, but would it be the worst thing? Did you guys see that? Would it be the worst thing to give them, to expect them to moderate fully and be responsible, knowing that would come with so many strict limitations, but that would probably see a decline in social media usage?
It would be the end of social media.
I disagree. I think, well, to your same point
because
earlier,
they couldn't possibly keep up with everything.
No,
that's the thing. It's,
to your
do you
point,
let it go unmoderated?
No, what I'm defending your point earlier is that now other businesses would figure out how to do this, and it would look totally different. Social media, as we know, I'm sure would end. You don't know. What I'm saying is, like, it would.
That would end. Google reviews would end. Yelp would end. Everything that you can think of would be liable.
Exactly. So they would have to moderate the stuff. Figure out how to do it.
How do you moderate that many people? There's like 2 billion Facebook users.
What I'm saying is this would,
no way.
You don't know what I'm saying. These huge companies, these titans, would probably fall at that point, and other people that could. I think you'd see a dispersion of these major platforms. You'd probably see smaller platforms that could maintain their 4 million. Parler wasn't having issues until they jumped up to 9 million, monetizing all or moderating all their content.
I think that they would have to be very specific about what is about the terms of what they are liable for. Like if it's all encompassing, like everything that shows up even in a comment section, like you're liable for that, then I think that you would then yeah, to Josh's point, you see the end of it. If it was like kind of like certain things, certain elements, like you'd have to categorize things as like a truth claim or just your own opinion, or the comment section would disappear entirely, or whatever it may be. It's difficult to even do that, to figure out what the line would be on that. But in order for social media, as we understand it, to even be salvageable, they couldn't just go full blow with like saying like you're liable for every single bit of minutia on there. That would shut down, because then at that point, Josh, if I'm right, wouldn't that mean that they're liable for something that has been posted there since their inception, or since the date that Section 230 would have been repealed?
I don't think they could. That'd be. I don't know how post de facto.
I think they would. They would write into that to either like amend them from not having to be responsible for that. I think they would write new legislation in a moving forward type thing.
Right, but yeah, no. I think that for platforms to allow for individuals to create content, for that to exist at all, you have to let the platform creators to moderate at their own discretion, but not be liable for what comes on there. So what you would see, if these things could even figure out a way to exist, which I think everything goes down if that's the case. I don't think there is an exception. But if they're somehow able to moderate everything, then any questionable news report whatsoever, I mean, we forget about, like, people freak out about the Hunter Biden story. Think of something even less questionable than that on a completely different side of the argument. It's just pull it. Can't risk it. Just completely pull it. So Josh,
I guess, and I don't disagree with you fully. I'm trying to push into that other side some more. What I what I think, because here's what I fear is happening right now, is that with no moderation, I mean no in the sense that like, hey, everything's out there except some obvious things. You can't say I'm going to go kill somebody. You can't, you're starting to see this increase where it's like, I don't, if they don't moderate it, then I think the people end up moderating it, and I don't know which one I'm scared of more. You know what I mean?
People.
Well, just in regard, and you see it happen. So it's a silly thing, but like Devin, you sent that picture about the next oh gosh, went totally blank on the game's name, the Assassin's Creed game.
Oh yeah,
Like you start to see the people, for right or wrong, again, because I have some examples in my head, but like where essentially the mob of people on the platform get to dictate then what is allowed and not allowed on there, acting as like de facto like moderators, if you will, because there are, the platform itself doesn't do it, and it ends up allowing for those things. I don't know which is worse. All I'm saying is that I think moderation probably needs to increase some, because the platforms, because they can then say, because if it's the people that have to do it on a free platform and end up dictating the content that's on there just by the masses, then that has a chance to just run into become who knows what. Whereas if it's the platforms, they can say, hey, look, you read our guidelines.
Potential future. I mean, that's essentially, I mean, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, this doesn't sound like an alternate reality. This sounds like what's going on now. Of course, public opinion can always restrain what people think just from social norms or
right.
pressure.
And what I'm saying is, I think
that will always exist no matter what.
Right, but on these social media platforms that are extremely influential, I would say that the possibility, the kind of moderation that would, or the direction that the masses would take a free platform, have potential to be more dangerous than a platform that raises its level of moderation and starts knocking down things, probably even before we would hope they would. I don't know, I'm just saying, I think that the platforms probably need to increase moderation to some point, because I mean, if not, these things end up, I don't know, failing is probably the wrong word.
Discretion, and I'm completely frozen.
Oh, I was like, I think he's saying something.
Did you get any of that?
No. Yeah. What'd you say?
I think platforms, I think it's good for them to moderate more, but at their own discretion. And while I might disagree with certain points, I think that that's where, let Parler come and moderate things in a different way than Facebook. I think that if people don't like how Facebook or Twitter handle things, they shouldn't say unrestrained, we should have a completely unrestrained vision. Just be like, no, go to somebody who's going to do it differently. And as Devin's saying, people just do these how they want to. Maybe social media becomes incredibly diversified. Maybe one just is overwhelmingly better and we all flock there at some point. I don't know. But let people decide. Let the content creators or the platform creators do what they want, because it's the only way that this can survive.
Yeah, it's messy, that's for sure. Needs to be known, though. If you guys don't follow us on social media, you probably should. So, man, well, it's been a crazy week. I'm sure over the next few weeks we'll continue to talk about probably not Parler as much, but just what's new. We talked about episode 1 last week, and I'm curious if you guys watched episode 2. The Mandalorian episode 3, though, for anybody that's watching, Josh and I are going to do our review of that episode and post it later today. But did you guys watch episode 2 last week? Yeah. Any thoughts, anything that you're hoping from episode 3 today?
So just for episode 2, do you remember how I said I really have a distaste for that character on Tatooine? Yeah, it's really over the top. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
After this episode, does it make more sense to you guys how I feel about this character?
No.
Jar Jar? After her frog speak? Oh my gosh. It's so much, guys. She's such an awful actress. She's written so poorly too. The writers aren't doing any favors. And it's like they saw her like, look, you're at 100% right now. I need you at 1,000%. And but when she started doing the frog language, just like saying like, wow, I was like, okay, all right. I can't do this character.
Do you know what my biggest problem with that was?
Huh?
Was the acknowledgement of the word frog in space.
Oh, did they say frog, actually?
Frog,
Yeah, I think they did.
like
It's frogs in space.
I don't speak frog. Wait, we're acknowledging that frogs are there too? Like
Yeah.
everything else is pretty much different except people and frogs. Like
People and frogs.
Yeah, episode 2 took a couple steps back for me personally, but
Yeah.
so
I saw the whole. The second I saw the eggs in that tank, I looked at my wife and I was like, "Baby Yoda's gonna eat those."
Which
Just
I
watch.
couldn't decide until the very end. I'm like, is this supposed to be comedic? Because it's supposed to be the sad story of this frog lady.
Yeah.
Which I know. But the sad story of this frog lady trying to reunite with her, she's got her fertilized eggs, she's trying to make it back to her home world, to her husband, frog person. And then Baby Yoda, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Josh froze again, but yeah, he was having some snacks.
So while Josh thaws out, the internet tried to cancel Baby Yoda over that. Like they were like, cancel Baby Yoda. Like Baby Yoda is a baby killer. Like and just, they're like, and there was like a debate. Like, well, people eat eggs, yes, yeah, but A, those eggs are unfertilized.
Not fertilized eggs.
Yeah, and B, even if they were fertilized, they're not gonna create creatures that are capable of like sentient thought. Like they're not like human like. It's like you're still eating that.
Yeah.
And it was like people are like, that's not cute, Yoda. Baby Yoda, that was bad. That was a bad thing. And the Mandalorian underreacted.
Yeah. Oh, and can I give you, I'm gonna start calling this and see if it catches my Parler perspective, where I'm a little more unsure about things. But the thought occurred to me, because at first I thought it was going to be like a tragic moment, like there was going to be like a violent reaction from the mom when she catches Yoda. But when it turned out just to be comic relief, I was like, oh, this is weird. But I just thought, well, Hollywood wouldn't care about fertilized eggs.
I know, yeah.
Well,
I was gonna make a joke about that, but Josh beat me to it.
That's my Parler perspective on it. That's
I was gonna say,
brainwashing the kids.
Anybody trying to cancel Baby Yoda because he was eating unfertilized eggs, I'd be like, I wonder if there were any pro-choice people in that camp. Oh, the hypocrisy. But
yeah.
The most alarming thing though was that she never really noticed. He ate a lot. He had to have eaten half. And she never at any point was like, I think I arrived with a lot more than these.
Well, I think what we've learned is that though frogs can like reprogram a droid, they can't count. That's just, I guess numbers are hard for frogs.
That's funny.
And like I'm pretty sure Nemo's parents counted all the eggs, right?
Yeah.
In Finding Nemo, they knew how many babies they had. She had like 12.
Yeah.
And Yoda ate 6 of them.
Well, sure, Josh, because at the end they only had to count 1. So
the fact that like
and on that note,
at one point you notice that like Baby Yoda realizes like, oh, this is like kind of like genocide. Like I'm killing off the last of this race. And it didn't matter. He snuck another one later on. Like
oh, plot twist. Baby Yoda is not Jedi.
He's a Sith.
He's part of the dark side.
Oh, you were okay. You're being funny. I was like, what?
I'm just saying, just without remorse, ate those eggs and then almost killed everyone with the spiders. Like,
oh yeah, those spiders are creepy.
That was the thing that frustrated me the most, was that like all of the bad things that keep happening are happening because of Baby Yoda.
Yeah. Or he's just a toddler and he knows it's wrong, but he doesn't care because they're delicious. So
I'm going to meet you halfway and just say all toddlers are evil. So
and can we say like I wanted to bring up, did you notice how like disjointed of a story this episode was? Like nothing, like if you were to outline this, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, Mandalorian wants to find another Mandalorian. So unbearable character introduces him to Frog Lady, who she doesn't even know. They go fly out. Space cops stop them and then chase them. And then they get stuck in a cave. And then there's spiders. And then the space cops save them. And they're like, hey, you're even more guilty of running away from us. But like, we're going to let you go. But we're going to leave you for dead. And it's just like, hold on, what is going on here? None of this makes any sense. So I'm not deterred from the series as a whole because episodic format, we can have losers, you know, but this was a dud. This was a definite dud.
Yeah.
Well, if you have already watched episode 3, then check back on our review. Today we'll post that around 4 on our YouTube and share it here on our Facebook page. But we will see you guys next week.
Yeah. Guys, my wife is making me homemade blueberry pancakes, and they're amazing.
And on that note,
I've been eating this whole time. Just
remember what
y'all know.
Remember what we talked about, Ben?
About
All right, we'll see you guys later.